Hi there guys, my name is Jacob and welcome back to the channel. Now in today's video I am going to share with you my October solar stats, and I'm also going to share with you some really exciting news towards the end of the video. So of course if you want to know what that is, stick around to the end. But today's video for the most part is going to be about those solar stats. And well, what can I tell you other than summer is well and truly over. Those days of just sun all the time, no energy bills, just exporting 95% of what we generate. Those days are, in the past for now. The latter part of 2025 is, of course, going to be, well, looking outside now, it's grey, it's gloomy, it's cloudy. And of course, that affects the solar generation. Now, of course, I expected this. The UK is hit and miss at the best of times when it comes to weather. Although, to be honest, this year we've had an incredible kind of spring, summer, and even some decent days, at the start of autumn. And of course, we're still in autumn. We haven't breached winter yet, but it definitely feels like we're in the middle of winter when I look at the stats. But before I get into the stats, for those who haven't seen the channel before and don't know what my solar PV system consists of, I have 13 440 watt solar panels. I have a 5 kilowatt hybrid inverter and I have a 9.5 kilowatt battery. Now the inverter and the battery are both GivEnergy and all my panels are fitted with Tigo Optimisers. And again, I just want to mention, because I do get asked this quite often, my energy tariffs are with Octopus Energy. I'm on the Octopus Go tariff for my import, and I'm on the Octopus Outgoing tariff for my export. And there is a link in the description box below. If you want to switch to Octopus Energy, feel free to click on that link and you'll get £50 of free credit. And I will also share in that as well. I'll get £50 too. So if you use that link, of course, a massive thank you in advance. Right then, let's get into the stats. So my total month generation for the month of October was 223.8 kilowatt hours. Now that is about 56% less than September. In September it was 509. So a 56% drop off from September to October is pretty massive. That is the steepest drop off I've seen so far this year. And to be honest, it's probably going to be the steepest because I guess it's going to drop just slightly lower each month now and just kind of then be plateau until maybe February where it picks back up again. But yeah, 223.8 kilowatt hours for the month of October. Now the best day was the 6th of October, and that was actually a really solid 21.8 kilowatt hours for the day. That was a fantastic day when I look across the month as a whole. And the worst day was 3 days before that, on the 3rd of October. And that was just a terrible 1.5 kilowatt hours for the entire day. So as you can imagine, that day was probably just thick cloud, probably raining as well, and basically just no generation. Across the whole month, 8.2 kilowatt hours were reclaimed by my Tigo Optimisers. And what that means is, I would have lost those 8 kilowatts had I not had the Optimisers on my panels. Now, it's only a small amount, but of course, when you're not generating that much, 8 kilowatts is actually a nice amount to have saved. Because of course, when you have such low generation, you want to hang on to every little bit of energy that your panels generate. So very grateful that they are doing their job. Now, as I've mentioned in previous videos, I had an expected generation figure from my installer when I had this system installed in January of this year. And that expected generation figure was 4,500 kilowatt hours for the entire year. Now, I'm happy to say I have actually exceeded that number, which is great news. And I'm now up to 5.3 megawatt hours or 5,300 kilowatt hours. So I'm roughly about 800 kilowatt hours above the expected generation. So the system is obviously performing very well. And all in all, that tells me that we've had a really good solar year. Can I expect that every year going forward? Probably not, I think is the honest answer. But anywhere around that kind of 5,000 kilowatt hours is, I think, a pretty good year from what I can tell. So I'm very happy with that so far. And when you think I've got November, December and a slight bit of January as well, because technically the system didn't go live till the very end of January. So I've roughly got 3 more months of stats to add to that figure. Now, of course, they're going to be a lot lower, so that figure isn't really going to go up by that much, but it's still going to make a difference to the overall total. So it will be interesting to see how much higher the system, achieves than that expected generation figure. But so far, as I said, 5.3 megawatt hours for the year so far, and I'm really happy with that. Now let's move on to the costs for the month, my energy costs. Now, of course, I've got solar panels, so I generate my own energy, but I do also buy energy from the grid, and that is mostly just to charge my battery overnight. So my electric costs for the month of October include a standing charge and come to £28.09. And as I said, that includes the standing charge, and it's also for me buying 85.5 kilowatt hours from the grid. Now, as I mentioned, I would say 99% of those kilowatt hours will have been bought at the cheap rate, which for me is about 8.5 pence a kilowatt hour. And that will be overnight that I've purchased that, just to top up my battery. So I start the day with, as near as I can, 100% battery. And that is because I get paid more to export energy to the grid than I do to buy it from the grid overnight. So it makes sense for me to run my system by charging my battery overnight to get it up to 100%. So then once the panels start generating in the daytime, I can export as much of that generation to the grid and get paid 15 pence a kilowatt hour for it. And as you can see that, when you're exporting quite a lot, that does pay off. And as I've mentioned in previous videos, I've had some really good months doing this. My gas bill for the month was just £13.90. That was mostly just the standing charge. And the reason for that is we didn't put the central heating on at all in October, which is, a great success. Ultimately, the weather hasn't dropped all that cold yet, so we haven't needed it. And we only use gas for heating hot water and, as I said, the central heating. So we've only heated hot water just to take showers and things like that. So the gas bill has remained very low for the month of October. I expect that to go up as we start putting the central heating on and things like that. But for now, it's nice to see that it's still low. Now, export income is normally one of my favourite topics to talk about and one of the most exciting parts of these videos. But as generation drops off, of course, it's not going to be as exciting to talk about. But we have to talk about it because this is the realities of having solar, and it isn't always going to be, sunshine and rainbows and, you're just creaming it with the export. It's not always going to be that way. So export income for the month of October was £27.64. And that was for sending 182 kilowatt hours to the grid. Now, as I said, £27.64. That is a big drop off from last month where I got £67.38. So, big drop off. What are we talking? £40 difference. So that just shows, with the generation dropping so much, as I mentioned, I think it was 56%. Roughly, the export has dropped. Well, actually, it's dropped a little bit more than 56%. But of course, I'm using more of that solar on the worst days. So on the days that don't generate much, I don't have much excess to send to the grid. So that's why the export figure is slightly lower than the overall generation drop off, if you know what I mean. But overall, £27.64. And if we calculate the electric charge, the gas charge, if we add those together and minus off my export for the month, then unfortunately, and this is, a big unfortunately, this is my first month since I had this system installed where I actually have got charged for taking energy from the grid. Now, my October bill was £14.35. So it's the first month where I've not received a credit from Octopus Energy, and they've actually billed me. Now, it's not the end of the world. I've got to say, my energy account has roughly £700 credit on the account, and that is purely not a penny of it. Well, actually, that's a lie. My direct debit is £1 a month. So technically, I've had this set up for about 10 months. So roughly £10 of that overall credit balance is my money. However, the remaining, say, £690 is purely credit that is built up from the solar that I have sent back to the grid and exported it. And then, of course, they pay me for that export. So I have a massive chunk of credit on my account currently that has built up all throughout the year. And now I'm leaving that on the account because I'm hoping, and I think I'll be able to make it quite comfortably, but I'm hoping to be able to use that credit to be able to pay for my electric, gas throughout the winter to get me through to kind of February, March, when the solar then picks back up and I start getting a credit again on my account. And to be honest, I don't think I'm going to use, £600 worth of heating. I reckon I'll probably use £300 to £400 at most. So I think comfortably I'll be able to make it through to March, still have a credit on the account come March, and then whatever's left, I think I'll just withdraw and treat myself to something, come March. And we'll start that cycle again of building up credit all the way to winter and then seeing if I can get through winter with that credit. But overall, I am so happy with my system. And, I've mentioned on the channel before, I paid £9,000 for the whole system. And personally, I think it is £9,000 well spent. I get a lot of joy out of having the system. It isn't just a financial decision, although the finances of it are a massive part of it, as they are for many people. But I also just get a massive sense of joy out of having the system. I love seeing these figures every month and knowing that, we are basically self-sufficient for, let's say 8, 9, 10 months of the year, where we actually generate way more energy than we could ever consume. So I guess we help out our neighbours as well with, producing their energy. That's kind of how I like to think of it. All that energy I'm sending to the grid, it has to go somewhere, and it's probably going to my neighbours. So I like to think, I'm doing my bit. Not only am I reducing, my carbon footprint, but potentially other people's as well. And there are a heck of a lot of benefits to having a solar and battery system. And, as far as first years go, I think I've had a pretty impressive first year so far. And I'd recommend getting a solar system to anyone. I really would. And I have recommended it to lots and lots of people. A couple of friends have ended up getting their own systems, as well as a couple of family members as well. So I like to think I've had a bit of a positive impact in that space. And even a couple of viewers, amazingly enough, a couple of viewers have actually reached out to me and said that they've either chosen to go down this route because of watching my videos, which is amazing. And some of them have even used the installer that I used as well. So again, my recommendation has helped them navigate the kind of intricacies of picking out a solar system and making sure it's right for them. So I'm really happy that, I've managed to have that positive effect. So all in all, really positive. I guess not that positive for October, and things are going to get a little bit worse, I imagine. November's probably going to be worse, and then December and January are probably going to be the worst months. But, then we look forward to spring, and I'm sure it will all pick back up again. So we look forward to spring, of course. Now, I did mention at the start of this video, I have some really exciting news. And that news is, I kind of teased it a few videos back, but I've been looking for an EV for quite some time. And I can finally say we have bought a new EV. Now, it's not actually new, it's new to us. It's 3 years old. But I'm not going to actually tell you what EV we have gone for in this video. I'm going to save that for a future video, a reveal in a future video. But what I will say, I'll give you a couple of hints. It isn't a British company who make this car, although some people might think it is. And it's also a really good value car for the package that you get as a whole for the price you pay. So with those hints, I would like you guys to let me know down in the comments, what kind of car, make and model do you think I've gone for? Let me know down in the comments, and then, as I say, in a future video, I will reveal what we've actually gone for. But the last week or so of owning the car has been amazing. You know, it's my first EV, so just driving it around, getting used to how it works. They are different to petrol and diesel cars, but to be honest, just they're so much better in almost every way. My wife was a bit of a glass half full type of person when it comes to the EV. She wasn't really sure whether she was going to like it. You know, she's always been a little bit on the edge with it, but she's been driving it around and absolutely loving it. So I think I've converted her when it comes to EVs. So that's a massive success. But yeah, as I said, let me know down in the comments what you think we've gone for, and I'll let you know in a future video. If you made it this far, guys, thank you very much for watching. Remember, there are a few links in the description box of this video that, of course, will help the channel if you use them. So if you do, I just want to say a massive thank you in advance. Remember to hit the like button and the subscribe button on the way out. And guys, I'll catch you in the next one.